This is Retire Hour.
Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on all things retirement, not just the investments. Of course, those are important, but we've also got tax advisors coming in later, a Medicare advisor, and of course, our estate planning attorney. And we've got the first half of the show with our financial advisors. But this week, I wanted to share with you guys, I had the privilege of sitting down with a new couple who came to one of our retirement education classes. And for privacy's sake, I'm going to call them John and Martha. And like many of you listening today, they've done well for themselves. Over the years, they've worked hard, saved diligently, and built up a nest egg of about almost $2.3 million. Now, that's no small accomplishment, and they should be proud of what they've achieved. But now when someone comes to us, we take them through our Core 4 report. Step by step, we take people through our report process, and that stands for retirement, estate planning, other risks like healthcare insurance, and taxes. That's REPORT. Like these 4 areas together determine whether your retirement holds strong or it unravels. And John and Martha are in step 3 of this process, which is where we take a deep dive into their investments and see how much risk they're really comfortable taking. As we went through that part of the discussion, I could see something interesting happen. John looked over at his wife, Martha, and almost like he was waiting for her to answer first. Martha said, well, I think a lot of people can relate to. She said, we've been pretty aggressive building the nest egg, but at this point, I'd be happy with just 7 or 8% going forward. We can't afford another 2008. I remember when we lost nearly half of our portfolio, and it took 6 or 7 years just to get back to where we started. Then her husband chimes in, John, and he said, I want to retire. I don't want to have to go back to work just to take care of us in retirement. And that's the moment that struck me, because it's something I hear quite often. People, they save and they invest, but when they finally get to retirement, they realize the rules of the game have changed. And when you're younger, you can afford to take risks, ride out the downturns, and wait for the market to recover. But once you step into retirement, that luxury, in my opinion, disappears. You can't just say, well, I'll give it 7 years and hope it comes back, because during those 7 years, you're withdrawing money out of that nest egg to live on. And every dollar you take out while the market is down is a dollar that no longer has a chance to recover. That's what we call sequence of return risk. And it's the risk of experiencing a downturn early in retirement while you're simultaneously pulling money out of that nest egg. And it can devastate even the largest of portfolios. Now, here's the kicker. We're at a really unusual moment in the economy right now. Depending on who you ask, we're either on the edge of a recession or standing at the beginning of a brand new industrial age powered by artificial intelligence on all this advanced technology. The markets, they're at or near all-time highs. On one hand, that can feel pretty great. But on the other, it leaves people like John and Martha wondering, is now the time the bottom's going to fall out again? If you're listening today and you've been thinking the same thing, you're not alone. A lot of people are worried about another financial crisis or another 2007, 2008. And let me tell you something. It doesn't take this financial genius to know that the market will eventually go down again at some point. The only unknowns are when and by how much. But here's the good news. You don't have to gamble your retirement on guessing those answers. Retirement planning, it isn't about predicting the market. It's about preparing for it. And that's, again, why we've built our Core 4 report process, because retirement just isn't about chasing the highest possible returns. It's about making sure the money you've worked a lifetime to save actually lasts as long as you do. And when John and Martha shared their concerns, I asked them a simple question. I said, what's more important to you right now? Maximizing growth or creating predictability and essentially peace of mind? Without hesitation, they both answered peace of mind. And that's the shift I see in so many people. Once you're close to retirement, or maybe you're already in it, your priorities change. It's no longer about swinging for the fences. It's about making sure you can cover your lifestyle, avoid unnecessary taxes, and not leave your spouse vulnerable if something happens to you. And you know what? That's exactly what good planning does. It gives you the ability to stop worrying about every little move in the market and start focusing on enjoying your retirement that you've worked for. So here's my question for you. Do you know how much risk you're actually taking in your portfolio right now? Do you know what would happen to your retirement if the market dropped 20, 30, maybe even 40% like it did back in 2008? If you don't know the answer to that, you may be carrying a bigger risk than you even realize. And at Market Advisor Group, we help people just like John and Martha find the balance between growth and preservation. Our team, which includes financial advisors, tax professionals, estate planning attorneys, and healthcare advisors, work together to coordinate every piece of your plan. Because retirement, it isn't one-dimensional. It touches every part of your life. And if those parts aren't working together, you could be leaving yourself exposed. So if you've been wondering whether you're prepared for whatever comes next, whether it's a recession or if it's a new industrial boom, I'd encourage you to take the first step with us. In fact, that step 1 of our Core 4 report process is simple. You call this number, 833-44-CORE-4, and schedule a 15-minute introductory call. On that call, we'll spend a little time learning about you, your goals, your concerns, and what retirement means to you. And you'll learn a little more about us and how our process works. Sometimes that conversation is pretty short, and it's all people need. It gives them the clarity, direction, and answers to questions that have been weighing on them for a long time. And sometimes it's the beginning of building a full plan that coordinates every area of retirement, from investments, taxes, estate planning, and healthcare. But really, again, it all starts with that 15-minute call. So if you need to get started, give us a call today, 833-44-CORE-4. That's 833-442-6734, or better yet, go on over to retirementhelp.com and you can schedule that 15-minute intro right there on the website at retirementhelp.com. Don't wait until the markets take their next dip to find out you're carrying more risk than you realized. Take that first step now, and let's see if that quick conversation is exactly what you need to move forward with confidence. I'm Matt Goolsby, and we'll be right back with Jonathan McCoy continuing this conversation from Kansas City right after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement. It's been a big week in the market this week. Federal Reserve getting involved and mixing up some things. But we're going to go up to Jonathan McCoy here in Kansas City. And Jonathan, I see that the story you're going to share with us about Scott and Lisa is kind of a continuation of a theme of my meeting with John and Martha that I had this past week up in Kansas City, right?
Yeah, we kind of came up with these stories throughout the week independently and coming to the same point that we're starting to talk to a lot of people about the same things, folks that have saved what they believe is a sufficient amount for retirement. And you start looking through our Core 4 process at what are these quote unquote other risks in their retirement. And Scott and Lisa were actually referred to us by some other folks we've been working with for 5 or 6 years. We're getting through roughly their first year with us under our management. And Lisa recently retired. Scott's preparing to retire in a couple of years. And they kept kind of hinting to me that, we've been really happy with returns. We like what we see in the market. But, and the but is always the more important part of the conversation, which is, what if, whether it's all of the geopolitical concerns that are going on and, concerns around sort of lackluster unemployment numbers, and what happens if the economy begins to slow down, if that starts to have a negative impact on the stock market, not just giving up some of these gains that we've appreciated over the last few years, but giving up income producing assets that are going to be absolutely crucial during their retirement. And they're only a couple of years out from when Scott retires and they decide to start pulling income from their retirement portfolio. And one of the things we walk them through is helping to understand what strategies are available to sustain that income flow through those downturns in the market. So we're not doing what you had talked about, which is exposing people to sequence of returns risk, which is sort of the opposite of dollar cost averaging, which we can get into a little bit. But when we get into this analysis, it's all about understanding there is a solution out there to help sustain your income through these market downturns. And it's easy for, I think, a lot of people to say, we've had basically 3 straight years of 20+% rates of return in the market, and that almost never happens historically. And that should be an indication to folks that it's not necessarily a sustainable thing to expect to occur over the next 5 to 10 years. Eventually, the market tends to revert back to some of these historical averages, and that reversion normally comes through some form of a downturn.
And sometimes when that reversion comes back, it retraces and hits another all-time new high. I mean, there's so many complexities out there, but I mentioned in my segment earlier that we're at a point in the economy where they've printed so much money. We're coming out of COVID. We've got tariffs coming on. There's a lot of uncharted territory is probably the best way to describe it going on in the economy. And I think it's got a lot of people concerned. And like you mentioned, we both came to this topic independently. And when we got together to do the show today, it was kind of interesting that you met with people last week that are starting to have concerns. I'm hearing from more and more people that are having concerns. But then I also have people that are really, use the term bullish on the economy as well. And I think it just gets back to, in retirement, like you mentioned, sequence of return risk. You don't want to just take all the up and all the down, because that can really work against you when you're taking money out of the portfolio.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, this thought just kind of came to mind, is we talk a lot about contingency plans, making sure that you've got something available, some safer asset of some sort that can sustain your income needs throughout these market downturns, so you're not totally reliant on the market just going straight up all the time. That's not going to be a reality. Well, I think about what is that contingency while people are working, which is something that leads us to have a much better or different mindset around remaining aggressive, sticking to those long-term buy and hold strategies when we're pumping money into our 401ks and taking advantage of that dollar cost averaging. Well, I think that contingency plan is you're still working, right? You're not planning to remain unemployed, in other words, known as retired, and you're not in a position where you're worried about being forced to go back to work during a market day. Doing something to you or your lifestyle or your income needs that is going to change your ability to remain retired, or even change your ability to go and do the things you want to do in retirement, thinking about the travel or the gifting to grandkids, all of the things that you want to do with these funds to enjoy your retirement are those things that you're going to have to sacrifice during these market downturns. And ultimately, we get back to this Core 4 report process and the types of plans that we put together for our clients. It leads to a very much different investing mindset for retirees that I think is something that is hard for a lot of people to take on in a short period of time, because we've been taught for decades in most cases that put your money in the market, ride it out, it'll always come back. Well, that always come back mindset doesn't mean that it's going to come back without you having to go back to work.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, these are kind of the concerns I'm hearing right now. People worried about where we are in the market. Another concern I'm hearing from people is they want to know how this one big beautiful bill, this extra $6,000 bonus deduction, impacts them. Is that something you're hearing from a lot of people too?
Yeah, it's a regular question. I mean, we've put out a lot of notices and actually had a webinar with our tax department. I think it was last week, that we took some questions from clients and got some info from our CPAs on how these things are impacting folks. And I think a lot of people are just curious about, okay, well, we know there's probably going to be some extra tax savings, but how's that actually going to work out for me? For us, it's more about the questions that we are bringing to people, because a lot of people don't know what to ask when it comes to new tax law and how it's going to impact them. It's very confusing and convoluted information for a lot of people that are not tax professionals. And one thing that we've worked in, especially over the last few months under the new tax code, is some additional line of questioning, especially for people that we're meeting for the first time. How is your current financial advisor addressing the potential income tax savings or just changes to your tax situation as it relates to your portfolio, as it relates to your investment management? Are they asking these questions? And, some of the feedback we're getting from folks is, our advisors always told us that they don't give us tax advice. So it leaves people sort of holding the bag and searching around for information. That's probably why we've had a little higher attendance at some of our tax classes here lately. But That's the reality of what we're talking about, is being able to bring these subjects to people to open up that conversation.
And so, guys, if you're listening to this out there, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I've got concerns about if there's another big market correction, can we really stay retired? I think that's the theme Jonathan and I are talking about here. Or maybe you don't understand how this new one big beautiful bill, the tax changes, are impacting you. And Jonathan just hit it there. If you don't know about these, if you don't know how it impacts you before the end of the tax year closes, how are you going to make sure you're maximizing, or in other words, doing what's best for you? And if you don't have someone that can give you tax advice with your investment advice, reach out and schedule that 15-minute intro call with us. And you can do that by calling 833-44-CORE4, or that number again is 833-442-6734. Or you can hop on over to the website at retirementhelp.com and schedule that 15-minute chat with us by phone and see if you're a good fit to go through our full-blown process. Or just like a call I had last week, maybe you just have a couple of questions of what's going on in your situation, not quite ready to come in and go through the full process, but you need some answers to understand what's going on with you. Again, schedule that call by calling 833-44-CORE4, or hop on over to the website at retirementhelp.com. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with this right after more. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement. I'm your host, Matt Goolsby, and it's like I'm having my first day on the radio or something. But we got Danny Goolsby here, an advisor with Market Advisor Group Wichita, and you said you have you basically are continuing the theme here, right?
Yeah, you in Block A, and then Jonathan also in Block B. So you're talking about where the market's at, and it's all at all-time highs, and how to maybe guard yourself against that. And will this market correct, or will it continue to go to the stars? You know, and I echo what you said in the Block A. About half of the world seems to think that that the market's going. We're in the golden age of America, and about half of the world thinks that we're on the edge of the abyss, if you will, from a market standpoint. And so where do you go from here? You look at the market; it's making all-time highs. But a traditional hedge for the stock market is gold and silver. And you look at the price of gold and silver right now, and they're making all-time highs as well. Or silver's not, but gold is. Silver's getting close to the all-time high. So I want to talk about something else, though, that again, dovetails together, and that is inflation. So how do you keep up with inflation when it comes to your portfolio? I mean, most of us concentrate on, do I have enough to retire? And what's really lurking behind that question is not necessarily do I have enough to retire, but will I have enough to retire? And then here's the crescendo, keep up with inflation. And that's a bigger question. That's a harder question. So let me ask a couple of questions here to the audience. What happens to the purchasing power of your money when prices rise over time? Or better yet, for people who are trying to retire, and more importantly, stay retired, how does inflation affect people who live on a fixed income compared to those who are still working? So if you're still working and you're getting that routine paycheck from your employer or wherever you get your income stream from while you're working, then it seems to be a little bit more easy to handle inflation on some levels. Some people would say that's not true, but let's understand the long-term effect of inflation. So if your expenses rise by 3% each year, what happens to your budget after 10 years if your income doesn't increase? And so if inflation is running at 3% for 10 years, as I said, 10 years later, you need approximately 50% more than what you did when you first retired. The question I have for the audience is how do you keep up with inflation? Do you have things built into your portfolio that are going to help you deal with inflation that is inevitably to come? As I said, some people think that we are on the verge of a new all-time high, or the market's going even higher and higher. Other people don't think so. According to a study by the firm called Truth in Accounting, they looked at what a Social Security check back in 1975. So a Social Security check in 1975, for every $100 that was made up that Social Security check, today in 2025, that's $100 is only worth $16.40 of buying power, or essentially an 84% decrease in purchasing power. So again, if you don't know a way to address inflation, then it's going to have an impact on your quality of life going forward. If you've saved enough going forward, or you saved enough to retire from your employer, or again wherever you've been working, that's one thing. But inevitably, the inflation is going to be a second thing, another thing that's coming down the road at us.
So just doing some math here. I mean, the national debt in 2018 was $21.5 trillion. And so today it's north of $37 trillion. And that's 2018 to 2025, 7 years. The national debt has exploded by more than 65%. That's what's driving a lot of inflation, because they're just printing more and more money, and they seem to have no interest in getting government spending under control.
Yeah, and we do workshops around the metro all the time, and one of those slides that's in that workshop that we do is a slide from usdebtclock.org, and in there's all kinds of numbers and facts and figures in there, but there's one called the M2 money supply. And so if you go back to the year 2000, this kind of echoes what you just said. Go back to the year 2000, the amount of money that was in circulation around the world was about $5 trillion. And the population of the United States in the year 2000 was about 300 million. Well, fast forward 25 years, there's about a 10% increase in population in the United States. So the population has increased by 10%, but the money supply has increased by 400%.
And so then spending is not showing any sign of slowing down. Last I looked, we're spending still almost as a government more than $2 trillion a year than we're taking in. Adding to that debt, printing more money. The Federal Reserve has $6.5+ trillion on its balance sheet. This is what we're talking about when we really haven't been in these conditions exactly before, but it's starting to line up either like Japan's lost decade or lost 3 decades,
right, or
in World War II, how they had to tax everyone into oblivion.
Yeah, and so those are so right. So going forward, how do you address these things? Well, the typical things that people will try to look to would be like things like TIPS, or those Treasury inflation-protected securities.
Yeah, and there's no taxes on TIPS anymore, right?
Right. Aha.
No, not those TIPS.
Yeah, different kind of tip. So you can use annuities. You can use dividend-paying stocks that are available to hedge against inflation. But the key to the message I have for this block is not just do you have enough to retire, but do you have enough to keep up? And what's your plan after you retire to keep up?
So guys, if you're listening to this out there and you're having concerns, or maybe you don't have concerns and you think things are going great, but you need a plan to keep up with inflation or manage market volatility, or all the things that can hit you when you're retired or planning for retirement, if you can't answer confidently to any of those questions that you're prepared, reach out and schedule a 15-minute chat with us right now. You can do that by calling 833-44-CORE4. That number again is 833-442-6734. Or you can hop on over to our website at retirementhelp.com and take that first step of just having a 15-minute chat with us by phone to see if you can actually benefit from going through our full-blown process, learn a little bit more about us, or just get some answers to some questions you have about what's going on in your situation. Well, stay tuned. Right after the break, we'll be right back with Presley from the Medicare department talking about a Medicare Advantage plan. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on all things retirement. We've just spent the first half of the show talking with some of our financial advisors, but now it's time to talk about those other areas. We talk about that in our Core 4 report process. That's where we look at the healthcare, the taxes, the estate planning, and the financial all in one picture. And we got Presley here, and you're going to talk to us about Medicare Advantage plans. Is that enough to cover without, can you just get everything covered by a Medicare Advantage plan, or is there other things that maybe are gaps in Medicare Advantage plans?
Yeah, so Medicare Advantage plans offer pretty comprehensive coverage. They also offer extra benefits sometimes, like vision, dental, and hearing.
That gym membership, that's what a lot of my guys,
yeah.
They're like, oh, but I get a free gym membership.
Yeah, an over-the-counter allowance, some meal plans once you get discharged from the hospital. So there are some extra perks with Advantage plans on top of their comprehensive coverage. Most Advantage plans have copays for certain doctor's visits, as well as coinsurance percentages up to an out-of-pocket maximum. And those copays can be pretty manageable for routine care. It really starts to add up, though, once you start having more serious illnesses and frequent doctor visits. So that's where a hospital indemnity plan comes in.
So what is a hospital indemnity plan?
So a hospital indemnity plan it's an ancillary product that we add on to Medicare Advantage, and it is basically a one-time payment once you get a certain diagnosis. So say you have a cancer diagnosis, you get a one-time lump sum to help you cover those co-payments and co-insurance and any unexpected out-of-pocket expenses.
Well, sometimes when people are diagnosed with cancer, they go to like Mayo. And they might have travel expenses. They might have to put their family or their spouse up in some hotels while they're getting treatment there at one of the Mayo clinics. And that's not going to be covered by traditional insurance.
So that's the great thing about hospital indemnity is that you are the beneficiary of that payment. It doesn't go towards the doctors themselves. You get that money and you choose where you want to spend it on.
So if you got to hire someone to take care of maybe your family while you're gone, you can do that. It gives you the check, and you're the one in the driver's seat. You're in control of where you're going to spend that money.
Yeah, exactly.
So this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, and I know Medicare Advantage plans are not right for everyone, right? And there's some people that go the supplement route.
Yeah.
But what you're describing to me almost sounds like a supplement for a Medicare Advantage plan.
Yes, exactly.
Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, no, it
Okay.
definitely just rounds out your coverage. Medicare Advantage plans do tend to have a little bit more gaps than a traditional supplement plan. With a supplement plan, you really know exactly what you're going to be paying. You have a $257 deductible. That's all you're paying. With Advantage, you have those copays, which you do know your copays when you sign up for that plan. So it's not completely out of the blue, not a complete surprise, but
But if you're like, myself, I'm a bachelor and I don't go to the doctor for every hangnail I get or every headache I have. And if you're not using a lot of clinics, doctors, visits, things of that nature, a Medicare Advantage plan can help you save money if you're pretty healthy, and then you get these other plans to help fill in those gaps.
Yes.
But if you know you're going to kind of need some health care, you typically see people that need that gravitate towards the Medicare supplement, and they have that fixed cost, but then they have a more of an ongoing obligation from that monthly payment from the supplement coverage, but they're not paying out of pocket like you typically would with a Medicare Advantage plan if you're not going to the doctor.
Exactly. Yeah, Medicare Advantage is more
And
of
why
a...
are you here if I got all this done?
Yeah, I know.
You just make it easy to understand.
Yeah, so Medicare Advantage is kind of a pay-as-you-go. So if you're not using it, most of the plans actually have a $0 premium. So you're not paying anything unless you're actually using the plan and you're going to the doctor, and then you have that copay, which normally they're not crazy copays. Normally they are pretty manageable. It's just for when you get into that frequent care or that serious illness. That's when that hospital indemnity really comes into play.
And it really is going to help, not necessarily wash out, but it's going to help you offset. That's a good word to use. Offset the cost of that maximum out of pocket for the Advantage plan.
Yes, exactly.
Would you get a Medicare, if you were on a Medicare supplement plan and not an Advantage plan, so that's the traditional side of Medicare, would you still get a hospital indemnity plan? Could you still get one? Would you need one?
You can still get one if you are still wanting to get that lump sum. If you think it's pretty likely that you...
Maybe you have a family history of
Yes.
cancer or heart attack or things like that nature,
Yes.
then you might want that
You can still
coverage.
get that lump sum for maybe any, like you said, hotel stays for your family members. Maybe that could help alleviate some of that stress. But with a supplement plan, virtually all of your medical costs are going to be covered by your Part A, your Part B, and your supplement.
Once you've hit that deductible, right?
Yeah, you are only responsible for that dirt low deductible.
Dirt low deductible.
Yes, for
Is that an industry term with you guys? Dirt low deductible.
For 2025, the deductible is annually $257. So that's all you're responsible for the whole year on top of your monthly premium payments.
That is dirt low.
Yeah.
$257. But what is a typical supplement plan costing someone a month? Just kind of a couple $100 a month?
We'll say...
It depends on their age and what's going on.
Yes, and their zip code as well, their location. We'll say anywhere from $140 to $160.
Okay. So again, between your Part B and your supplement and then your deductible, it can add up. But if you're going to the doctor once a month,
Exactly.
that's a little bit more the plan for you. And if you're turning 65, getting off your work coverage, you don't have to prove that you can pass underwriting. You can almost have one foot on the banana peel and be in the hospital, so to speak. But after that initial open window, that open enrollment for your first time going on to Medicare, you do have to go through some underwriting to go to a supplement right? Or pick a supplement, go from maybe a different supplement to another.
Yes, if you're wanting to go from Medicare Advantage to a supplement, or if you want to switch your supplement, you do have to go through a series of health questions that we call underwriting to kind of screen where you're at with your health, and they do have the right to deny you coverage.
Well, if you guys are paying attention, I can follow along with the bouncing ball a little bit, and that's because I interview these guys every week. But I can't stress enough how complicated and how much of what I call a can of worms is Medicare. And if you don't understand Medicare, between the difference between Advantage or this traditional route with supplements, or maybe you just have questions about your healthcare coverage and you're worried that you might not be covered the way you think you need to be, reach out and schedule a 15-minute chat with us by phone by calling 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-44-CORE4. Or you can hop on over to the website at retirementhelp.com, or better yet, find Presley at one of her in-person classes this Medicare open enrollment season, because there's a lot of changes that happen every year, and you want to make sure those changes don't have a big impact on you in a negative way. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Alex Robinson with Eidelman Law Firm, talking about the estate planning cliff. We'll be right back with more right after this. Welcome back into Retire Hour. You know, I was just talking here with Alex at the break, between the commercial breaks here, and he's one of our estate planning attorneys at Eidelman Law Firm. It's better to have a plan than to not have a plan. In fact, to be even more specific, overwhelming majority of the time, it's cheaper when you have a plan versus you're reacting, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you and I were talking about this estate planning cliff. Tell us what the estate planning cliff is.
Yeah, so that applies at every stage in the estate planning process where, you know, maybe you get a flyer in the mail from us, or you've seen us on TV or listening to this podcast. You're like, oh man, I really need to get in and see someone, or I need to go into that seminar. And then, you know, life happens and you forget about the seminar, or you don't make an appointment, or, you know, you go to the seminar and you're like, oh, absolutely, I need to go set an appointment, and then you cancel the appointment at the last minute because, you know, someone got hurt or someone got sick, or
Life happens.
Yeah, life happens.
It's football season.
Right, exactly. Hey, that's a very valid excuse in my house, for sure. Yeah, but it's where you aren't making decisions proactively, you're reacting to life. And, you know, for example, it's much cheaper to drink water than to go to the hospital because you're dehydrated and get a saline solution.
That's where you're going with that. I'm like, it's cheaper to drink water than soda, pop.
Yeah, no. It's that way with everything, right?
Preventative.
If you are acting to prevent things ahead of time, then it's going to be cheaper in the long run than just waiting until, you know, you need to use a power of attorney and then you don't have one, because guess what? You can't get one at that point. You need to go get guardianship and conservatorship.
And I was reading a study the other day that said it was over half of America did not have some form of an estate plan.
Right.
And if that's the case and someone dies, things have to go through probate, and that probate expense is anywhere from 3 to 6%. So, you know, on a easy math, on $1 million estate, that's $30,000 to $60,000.
Yeah.
I've never seen you guys charge
Anywhere close to that. Yeah.
$30,000 to $60,000 for someone's estate plan. Can you imagine?
Right.
Can you imagine having someone come in and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and prepay my probate expenses right now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to cut you guys a check. We're going to split it down the middle. We're going to call it $45,000. Okay. And you guys, I'm going to get, it's like prepaying for a funeral almost. You've never seen anyone do that.
No. And, you know, what I always see is almost everyone who comes in with the story of, you know, my brother-in-law just went through this where, they've had a bad experience. And so, you know, it's great that that's motivating them, but I want you, the viewer, to not be motivated by something bad happening. I want you to be motivated by, you know, trying to prevent something bad from happening, because those are not fun experiences.
So I'm sure you guys work with people not just that work with us. You guys are open to the general public.
Yep.
They don't have to work with us to work with you guys. So you've seen instances where someone didn't have the right plan. Do you have an example of one of those right now where someone had to spend some good amount of money to go through probate?
Yeah. I got a call the other day from someone who his mom and his dad didn't have anything in place. The home was owned by the mom first, and then the mom passed away, and the dad just lived in the house.
Oh, no.
And now the dad passed away, and now the son owns the house, but the house wasn't ever taken care of because they didn't do any preventative measures on the house. So the house is a disaster, and he wants to sell the house. But now we have to go through 2 probates in order to do that. And, he doesn't have a lot of cash. He lives paycheck to paycheck. And so it's going to be really hard for him to be able to come up with the money to be able to do that.
Have to go through 2 probates. So probate at minimum takes 6 months. So if you have to go through 2 probates, is that at least a 12-month process? Can they run side by side?
They can run side by side.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
that's grief. He's gonna have to wait 12 months to sell this house.
Right. And it's not going to be pleasant for him, and he knows that. And he tried to get his parents to do some planning, and there's sometimes a feeling from a lot of people that, hey, I'm going to be gone, it doesn't matter, they can figure it out. But that isn't always the case.
And so this person that called you, that, like you said, they don't have a lot of, they're working with, what's the strategy there? I mean, they're going to have to hire you guys to take those 2 estates through probate to even sell this house?
Mm-hmm. And then we're going to take a higher percentage because we're not getting paid up front, and we don't know what the house is going to sell for. So we're going to charge more because we're not seeing the results from it for 6 months ourselves.
So this is kind of back to what I was saying earlier. If you do not have a plan, I mean, because I think there's a number of reasons why people put off estate planning. Like you said, it oftentimes happens when something else as bad has happened to someone else, whether it's a family member, maybe that person has gotten or received that's bad English, don't tell my mom I said that. Maybe the person has received a bad health diagnosis.
Yeah.
And they've received some bad news from the doctor, and that's triggering them. But I think sometimes people put off estate planning, not just because we don't want to talk about our own mortality. I think sometimes people put off estate planning because they think it's expensive. But to not have an estate plan sounds like it's a heck of a lot more expensive than any kind of plan that you guys have ever charged for.
Yeah. Well, and it works just the same as insurance, right? You can drive without insurance until you get caught or until you get in an accident, and then it's going to cost a lot more. And the same thing with estate planning. You don't need a power of attorney until you need one, but when you need one, boy, do you need one. And at that point, a lot of times you just don't have that option to get it.
And so, guys, if you're thinking to yourself out there, well, I don't know what estate plan I have, or maybe you don't have one at all. Maybe yours is older than 5 or 6 years and you haven't taken it out and revisited it. And like Alex said, life happens, and especially it's football season. So you don't want to put that off until it's too late, because it'll cost your loved ones, your family, your beneficiaries more than having a plan. And if you need to have some help or maybe even some questions answered on what's going on in your situation, reach out and schedule a 15-minute chat with us by phone by calling 833-44-CORE4. That Core 4 stands for our Core 4 report, where we take people through all 4 areas of their retirement. Or you can go over to retirementhelp.com and schedule that 15-minute chat with this team by phone so you can get answers to your question and get some confidence and clarity moving forward. Well, speaking of moving forward, after the break, we'll be back with Lauren Dietz talking about the IRS assessing some penalties over false tax credit claims. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more right after this. Well, I know everyone out there listening just loves to give more money to the IRS, right?
Yeah. Don't you?
Oh, wait, what?
Wait, what show are we on?
Yeah, right. So this is Lauren Dietz with Market Tax Services, one of our tax advisors here. And you and Joshua did a live Facebook Live event last week about the One Big Beautiful Bill. But the IRS, just because they're talking about the new changes, IRS can come out and talk about things that are going on with them, and they're assessing these penalties over false tax credit claims. What is this?
Yeah, so if you use social media at all, you've probably seen ads on pretty much any platform, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all of them, of these, so-called tax experts that are like, oh, there's all of these different credits that you can claim that you qualify for. Everybody qualifies for them. And
do they?
No.
Huh.
No.
And so these people that are on social media, they're generally not people that have a CPA. They're not an enrolled agent. They're not anyone that's credentialed. They're just trying to get likes and shares, and they're clickbait, so to speak. It's not really true tax advice.
It's not true tax advice. And some of, I mean, I've seen a lot of these ads myself. Some of them are pretty convincing, where they pose as these like tax experts that have been in the industry for, decades. Or, it's like seeing those ads where it's like, we can help you file the last 3 years of your taxes and save you, 50% on whatever you owe. And
very salacious,
it's like
grandiose claims.
Right. Like that does not happen very often.
No, not really. I mean, there's benefits where you can make the tax code work for you, but just blanketly saying everyone's going to qualify for these tax credits, that's pretty crappy tax advice.
Right. And it's a lot of these tax credits that they're talking about are tax credits that are specifically for like small business owners. And not everybody's a small business owner. Actually, I had a client call me last week that was like, she'd seen something on social media and she's like, can I rent my condo to myself?
Oh.
And I was like, she's like, if I put it in my LLC, can I rent my condo to myself? And I was like, no.
Well, you can, but you're not going to it's not going to work the way you think it's trying to work.
It's not going to do what you think it's going to do. And unfortunately, it's hard to go after all of these people that are giving this bogus tax advice. What ends up happening is it's the taxpayer that followed it that didn't know better. Or maybe they did. But a lot of times people are just like, oh my gosh, I can do this? Okay, great. And then they end up getting hit with the penalties and the interest. And the IRS likes to assess extra penalties for filing a frivolous tax return. They do not take kindly to that kind of stuff.
And there's no really, not statute of limitations. That's not the right word, is it? The IRS can go back as long as they want if it's fraudulent. There's no sunset on, well, it's 3 years for an audit or 5 years. It's none of that, or 10 years for collection on past due balances that are, if it's fraudulent, the IRS can go back forever.
Yeah, if they deem you filing fraudulent tax returns specifically, not, you made a mistake on accident. If it's obvious that you are trying to get around and get these tax credits that you don't qualify for, they'll go back forever. And and those penalties get real steep. But I mean,
put you in tax jail. No, I'm just kidding. There's no such thing as tax jail. But it's all the penalties and the interest. And if and rates are higher, it's not very cheap to have these penalties and interest assessed. And what's even worse is when you have the money, it's kind of like, I remember back to when I was a kid and those first days when I'd overdraft my bank account, I might had the money in savings, but I didn't have it in my checking account. And it really burned me to have to pay that overdraft fee when I had the money.
Right.
If you're getting charged penalties and interest because you took bad tax advice off social media, that's got to really burn, because you're going to get hit with even more penalties and interest. And you better invested those tax savings and made a heck of a lot of money on them to justify those penalties and interest.
I mean, the IRS said that they have assessed $162 million in penalties over false tax credit claims.
We can find that in the couch cushions. That's chump change for the federal government.
Yeah, and that's to the taxpayers. That's not to these people that are giving this advice. However, they do recommend, if you think that if you see something and you believe it to be a scam, to report it to them so that they can go and investigate it further. I'm
sure they have even more claims than they can even investigate.
Probably.
So, and can you imagine, I mean, I know it's not right now, but I can't believe it's not been talked about more widely. Can you imagine when they get AI to in here with the IRS and start using AI to look through all these returns and say, this one needs to be flagged, this one needs to be flagged. You're going to be really regretting taking that tax advice from some random stranger on a social media post. And we even talk about that in our tax classes. We'll tell stories about examples to give people ideas what can happen to them. But we're saying, don't take this as tax advice. Come in and get individually tailored tax advice to their situation.
Yeah, I mean, because everybody has different situations going on. It's not a one size fits all. And that's why we like for people to come in. And also, it's nice when they use all of our services, and you can have everybody in the room together and talk about it.
And just like you said the other day, you had a gal that called, said she saw something on the internet. She had a tax advisor she could call that could pull up her tax return when you were talking to her on the phone. You could see what was going on in her situation, and you could speak to it intelligently.
Right. And I mean, kudos to her for calling and asking. I mean, I kind of chuckled after I got off the phone, but I'm like, I'm glad that she asked instead of just doing it.
Yeah.
And then, womp womp, it's tax time. And I'm like, no, you cannot do that.
And the womp womp would have probably came a couple years down the road, and she'd have been doing other things by then, and maybe where did I figure out how to do that from? And it's a recipe for disaster if you're not having a tax advisor that's answering your questions, that knows about your situation. And if you don't have a tax advisor or a financial advisor working together, how are you making the best decisions for yourself? If you don't know, reach out and schedule a 15-minute chat with us by phone by calling 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-442-6734. Or you can hop on over to our website at retirementhelp.com and schedule that 15-minute conversation with us, just to maybe get answers to some of the questions you have, or better yet, see what gaps you have in your plan and what blind spots you have, and get them addressed before they cost you thousands of dollars. Well, thanks for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week on Retire Hour.
Investment advisory services are duly offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor, and Market Investment Group LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The investment advisor representatives of Market are also affiliated with and registered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, and may provide services on behalf of both firms to client or prospective clients where properly licensed or exempt. This show is presented by Market Investment Group LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor that only conducts business in jurisdictions where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean that the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. The firm is not engaged in the practice of law or accounting. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the show's publication and are subject to change. The information presented is not an offer to buy or sell, or a solicitation of any offer to buy or sell any of the securities discussed. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Any legal or tax information provided in this show is general in nature. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Annuity and life insurance guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. If you withdraw money from or surrender your contract within a certain time after investing, the insurance company may assess a surrender charge. Withdrawals may be subject to tax penalties and income taxes. Persons selling annuities and other insurance products receive compensation for these transactions. These commissions are separate and distinct from fees charged for advisory services. Insurance products also contain additional fees and expenses. Social Security rules and regulations are subject to change at any time. Always consult with your local Social Security office before acting upon any information provided herein. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. This is not endorsed by the U.S. government or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-Medicare to get information on all your options. All client or prospective client names have been changed to protect the identities of the individuals discussed. All rights reserved.